Good morning, Conchita. We are live for the first time.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here. This is my first time going live also. So this is new beginnings.
We are stretching our technology and we will watch as folks come in. We're a little bit early, 5 minutes early, but we figured we better try it before we get in and not be able to communicate with folks.
Absolutely. Hopefully we get a good group of people that come on today. I'm excited about our program.
I am as well. I gotta turn my sound off. Okay. All right. So I think we're ready. Yeah, I hope we get a good group. What we've planned, I think that the Target 3 committee has really done a good job of planning, brought some good folks on to give us some good information, how to manage things while we are in this weird space. And so we should be able to provide some good information.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I've had an opportunity to talk to our special guests briefly leading up to this, and seems like they both have a lot of really good information. As a business owner, I'm really excited about some of the information that is going to be shared. We're all trying to manage through these times of uncertainty. And so I think, this is the more information you have, the better off you are and the better prepared you will be for whatever's next, right? What's next, we don't know. But I think, just a lot of the information that I'm hoping that is shared today will help us prepare for the unknown as best we can.
Definitely. We have our one of our first viewers, Ms. Valerie Cooper, who is the owner of Picture That Pictures, has checked in with us. So good morning, Valerie. Please share, let everyone know that we're here to provide great information. I can't talk directly to you, but we can definitely read your comments. So please share with everyone you know.
Great. Yes, please share. Everyone, please share on your Facebook page. Again, lots of really good information is going to be shared, and so it will be important to make sure that we disseminate this information as best we can. So please share this live feed on your Facebook page.
And Conchita, in talking about that, we learned that we've heard a lot on the news about the lack of support that Black businesses have gotten during COVID in terms of that financial support and navigating that. I think a lot of small businesses have really struggled with knowing how to navigate that piece of funding. So I think we have some experts that can help us out with that.
I'm really excited. Again, as a business owner myself, I've been struggling, to be frank with you. So I'm really excited to hearing some of the information that our special guests have to offer today, because there are programs that are out there for us that is supposed to benefit everyone, all business owners, whether you're an independent contractor, to whether or not you are, a company that has staff or you have plants and equipment, those types of things. There's a lot of resources. Figuring out which resources are appropriate for your business is the difficult part. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing how other businesses are managing, right? How they're reaching the resources and the documentation. I mean, I think that is one of the things that I've struggled with personally thus far, is understanding what documentation is needed, as well as if you are the recipient of any of the resources, is making sure you document it correctly so that you can maximize that benefit.
Definitely. Well, our viewership is increasing. I see that Dr. McLean is on, Dr. Jackie McLean, who is the proprietor of McLean Smile. She's joined us, and Nicole Wright is also joined us, who's a non-for-profit business owner. So our folks are checking in and they're coming in. So welcome. We're going to get started here in a little bit. Conchita and I are just talking about the program and watching you all come on, and please say hello when you come on, share on your Facebook pages, your personal pages. Should be some great information. We will, once it gets done, we'll even start a YouTube page. So you can rewatch it and get the information consistently.
Yeah, and just on the instructions on how to share on your Facebook page, please go to Facebook and look up Omicron Upsilon Omega. If you find Omicron Upsilon Omega's Facebook page, you will see our live feed, and then you can share that to your own live feed on Facebook. And that's how we will spread the word so we can reach as many people as possible.
All right. So I did something new. I'm not that great at watch parties, but I started a watch party. So we'll see how that goes. This is you all are taking me into the 21st century, kicking and screaming. So welcome, Claudette Forbin. Welcome to the program. We're going to start here in about 1 more minute. So please share. I see Tanya Clemens just joined us as well. Good morning, Tanya. Good to see you here this morning. And so Marsha Prophet has joined as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Lovey McCowan has joined, friend of Valerie Adams Baker. So welcome. Shante Primus. So great. We have a few viewers here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of good information to share with you this morning. I am Lisa Henderson Bennett. I'm the president of Omicron Upsilon Omega chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. This program is brought to you by Target 3, Building Your Economic Legacy. And the purpose of this target is really to increase the knowledge and the awareness of entrepreneurs and us as women or people of color building our economic legacy. It deals with financial fitness, credit readiness, and business ownership. Today, we're going to do a program on how to navigate all that's been going on with COVID and our businesses of color and how they've managed that. So I'm going to turn it over to your host for today, Ms. Conchita Tucker, and she will bring in our guest and we will start the program. Ms. Tucker, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Lisa, I'm really excited today. As we were discussing before we came on live, is that our true special guests are really rock stars, right? So one is the small business owner, and so we want to hear how he's specifically navigating a lot of the resources that are available for business owners, his personal experience in that. The other is someone who is helping business owners navigate all of the resources that are available to us during these unprecedented times. So I'm really excited for the discussion. The way that our program is going to run today is that we're going to invite our first guest, which is William Boyd, to join me. And William Boyd has, there he is.
Good morning. Hi.
William Boyd, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to have you here. I wanted to just sort of give our audience a quick background on who you are before you get started. Again, I know I'm personally very excited about some of the information you're going to be sharing today. And so I'm really looking forward to getting some guidance on how to navigate these resources that are available. So I'm looking forward to that. So just a little bit about Mr. Boyd, you all. He started his own business, The Look, a car appearance center in 1987, where he specialized in car detailing and consulting. His client base included several of the major hedge funds and investment firms in Fairfield County, whereby his interest in financial services grew. He joined World Financial Group in 2001 and became a licensed senior associate selling life insurance, annuities, mutual funds, mortgages, and was also tasked with training new reps in Connecticut. He left the industry for a short time to work with Yellow Book, selling advertising to small and medium-sized businesses, and became Google certified for SEO and SEM. He joined MW Financial Group, which is now Certified Financial Services, in 2014 and specializes in life, disability, and long-term care insurance. So Mr. Boyd has worked with small businesses for a long time. He's run his own business for several years. So I'm really excited to hear from you, William. Please take it from there.
Good morning, all. And thank you for the opportunity to serve our community in the line of finance. I take this very seriously, and I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, we want to just shake and just relax, because usually when people talk finance, people get tense. I want people to feel comfortable and not only receiving the information, but asking questions. No question is dumb or, gee, I don't know that. All questions are important because what you don't know could actually cost you money. So we're going to talk today about the PPP loan, the CARES Act, how it serves you, and some things that you may not know that could help your business, even if you are receiving the money, using it for staff, or receiving the monies and not actually needing it and using it for other different things. So if you don't mind, I'd love to share my PowerPoint presentation and we'll go through it.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. So let me know if you can see it there.
Looks good. I can see it.
Okay, it's the Paycheck Protection Program. And you see the first slide, it says PPP loan. The second moniker picture there says paycheck. And then you have utilities, rent, mortgage, utilities, phones, cell, and then what's next, and then alternatives. So I'm going to start with the business loan. PPP loan, funding approved via the Small Business Administration, the SBA. The purpose of this act was to provide emergency assistance for individuals, families, and businesses affected by the 2020 coronavirus pandemic. For smaller and specially qualified businesses, the Act offers financial assistances via the new Paycheck Protection, PPP, which is part of the CARES Act, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. That's what CARES Act stands for. Paycheck. This is the big one. This is the one that usually trips most people up. Like, what do I do? You can use the funds to payroll costs for staff, and if you are the sole owners or employees of your business, you can use loans to pay yourselves. I'm gonna stop there. Why is that important? Usually you have savings, you have revenues, you have money set aside when there's no revenues for a month or things are a little tight. You have personal funds. Generally, most business owners will use their own money to fund the business and keep the business liquid and keep it moving. In a case like this, you can use these funds and then withhold your personal money to do things that I'm sure have gone awry in your own personal lives. So the next screen, we're talking about guidelines for loan forgiveness, 75-25 rule. Legislation signed on June 5th, 2020 lowered to 60% from 75%, the minimum percentage of PPP funds borrowers would have to spend on payroll costs to have loans forgiven. Know this. The speed in which this bill was approved has created quite a bit of confusion and constant changes. However, it should not discourage you from applying for these funds. As of Friday, June 12, 2020, there is still nearly $130 billion still available from the second round of funding released on April 27th. So we'll stop there a second. Meaning, I've done about 5 revisions of this presentation in the last week. The laws with Congress and their meeting, there are a lot of different things that they didn't foresee. For instance, lowering it to 60%. What has happened is they're inviting employees back to come back to work, to open up, but they're having a hard time spending that $75,000 if that employee doesn't come back. And as the owner, should I take income or not? So it's getting really difficult to meet that 75% threshold. So they lowered it to 60%. To help business owners out. And I'm sure they're going to even adjust that going forward. Next slide. Alternative covered period. Here's another update. Covered period extension. The end of the covered period is extended from June 30th, 2020 to now, December 31st, 2020. This gives borrowers until the end of the year to spend the PPP loan proceeds. Very important. How to turn the loan into a grant. Again, this is a very fluid situation in that the Flexibility Act approved on June 5th, 2020 has made changes to simplify the loan forgiveness application. Extension of time to repay the loan, possibly from 2 years to 5 years, amongst other things. And here's an FYI, you should consult your CPA, tax consultant, and or tax attorney for information that pertains to your particular business. Funds should be used strategically, not maliciously. And I think we all know what that means. So here we go, guys. How to maximize loan proceeds. Let's say I don't need the funds for payroll, rents, utilities. I have a small business in my house. Here are some of the ideas. Capital projects. I needed to update some plumbing. I needed to hang a wall. I needed to update the windows in my office. I need a new van, a delivery van. I need new computers, servers. Equipment upgrade, that would go into equipment upgrades. I need technology. I need to redo my website. I need to redo my advertising budget. And as I talked about being Google certified at a time, you might want to do a Google AdWords program or search engine marketing. Number 3, debt interest rate consolidation. We'll talk about that later. Expansion. Do I want to buy another business, a local business that might be on hard times due to this pandemic? Do I want to use the monies for that? So with that being said, let's discuss number 3. Fixed loan versus business credit card debt. Okay, so we see there we have a $20,000 loan. Let's say it's a PPP loan. I have it in my bank account, $20,000. The loan term in years is 2 years. The interest rate, as we could see on the bottom there, I think we're on a different screen there. Oh, we're on a delay. The interest rate on the bottom is 1%. So you see, you would make payments of $842.04 for a total of 2 years. And if you see right at the very bottom, the total cost of interest is $209. Minimal. That is the cheapest money you can buy. And understand this, sorors and whoever's watching, all the people in the audience, is that anytime that you take out a loan, whether it's credit card, car loan, personal loan, business loan, HELOC, mortgage, you are buying money. You always want to buy money when it's on sale. So you see here, as a fixed loan through the PPP funds, under their guidelines at 22 years at 1%, this is very cheap money. Now imagine, I didn't even do this, imagine if this was extended to a 5-year term. That interest would go up, but you would have a much lower payment per month. Now, consequently, let's see business credit card debt. The average business has a Business American Express, a Business Visa, account just to float expenses on when money or revenues or money's accounts receivables are a little delayed. So let's say we took that same amount, credit card balance 20%, $20,000, an interest rate of 18%. That minimum payment would be $999 per month, with a total interest cost over that same 2 years of $3,963. Quite a bit of money. Now, here's the question. Could you use an extra $3,754 in savings? This is the power of using PPP funds. Even if you don't use them for staff, you don't use it for rent, you don't use it for utilities, and you are able to qualify this money and it's just sitting in your account. What do I do? Oh my God, it's not going to be forgiven. What if I have to pay it back? Well, if you go back to these 2 slides, if I take this scenario and I use this money to pay down some other things, do capital projects, build out, pay off some other debt, loans that are costing me maybe not 18%, but just consolidate. By having an 18% interest rate on a credit card, the way credit cards work is you take that 18% and you divide it by 12. So you're in fact paying 1.5% interest on that $20,000 per month. So at 1.5%, that would be about $300 a month just in interest. And you see, if you go back to this simple interest loan, if you did that same scenario, you're paying probably a little less than $10, maybe $9 a month. So at the end of the day, question still remains, and this is only on a $20,000 scenario. Could you use an extra $3,754? Okay. And the next slide is, oh my God, who put that slide in there? Oh, geez. I think they made me put that in there. So I will go into just speaking now outside of this presentation. But more importantly, here's the thing I would like most small business owners and people listening to understand. major corporations and businesses who are publicly traded companies went after these funds to the tune of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. You take the example of Shake Shack. They applied for a loan and received $14 million in PPP funds. Why is that important? The issue is not whether I should take the money or not. They provided this economic relief because these are uncharted times. Things are very difficult. So instead of wondering why I should do something, you get the money and then stage it and decide what you can do with it thereafter. So in saying so, you have Shake Shack, 14 million. You had Ruth Chris Steakhouse, and I might add they returned these funds. Ruth Chris Steakhouse got about, I think it was 6 million. And even the Los Angeles Lakers, my favorite basketball team, they received $6 million. The moral of the story is they didn't wonder what they could use it for. They actually went after the funds. So in one of the previous slides, make sure you talk to your tax accountant. Make sure you talk with your tax attorney or your CPA to make sure you don't run afoul for using those funds. But on the other side, don't always look at the loan forgiveness as the major benefit of this monies. Use this money for other things that are needed also, even if you have to pay it back, because it's the cheapest loan you will ever see. So with that, I'll defer back to our host, Conchita Tucker, and then I'll save some time for later so we can take questions.
Thank you, William. There was a lot of really good information, and I have tons of questions already. As I mentioned, I'm a business owner, and trying to understand how to best utilize the PPP loan has been one of those things that keeps me up at night. So I certainly will have more questions for you later. And thank you so much for your presentation. I do want to say one thing that you did say that stood out to me is buy money when it's on sale. And it's on sale. And I really want you to help us understand where we can apply for the PPP loan. So when we open it up to the Q&A after Mr. Clemens comes on, if you can give us some ideas on where we should be going to put in an application and what type of documentation we need.
Right, and I have an answer for that shortly even now. Generally, dealing with your local banks, I've had clients that dealt with local banks, some of the larger banks, I won't name them, that were not prepared to help their clientele with their loans. And it has been documented that a lot of the banks push the smaller businesses, SMB, small and medium-sized businesses, back so that they can cater to their larger clientele, because those banks make a commission when they did these SBA loans. So they kind of shuffled the deck. So if you were a smaller business, revenues under $500,000, you pretty much got pushed to the back of the line and probably didn't receive funding out of the first rollout. So the first thing is to make sure you establish a relationship after this. Sit down and talk with your banker. Tell them what your expectations are for having your money with their bank and going forward, the type of relationship that you like. Secondly, having the proper documentation. Many times businesses try to operate in a zero revenue, or I don't want to pay taxes, so let me not show anything. Well, where that hurts you is when you go to get money, they see that you don't have revenue, so you've kind of killed your opportunity to get monies when you're basically saying to them, I don't make any. So FYI, going forward, you want to show money. You want to show that you're vibrant, that you have stable income and you're growing your revenues, because in times like this, when you need to get money, you have to show that you have the ability to pay it back, or you warrant them loaning you money in the first place.
Absolutely. That's very helpful. And you're right. That is one of the things that a lot of business owners do, is avoiding, large tax liabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again, William. I appreciate it. We're going to bring you back on in a bit for our Q&A. Right now, I would like to cue our producers to bring in our next guest. His name is Mr. Thomas Clemens. Thank you, Mr. Clemens, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to just do a quick read of your bio, Thomas, and then I will let you take it from there. And you can tell us about your business and tell us how you are navigating these times. Thomas K. Clemens II is a native of Lake Charles, Louisiana. He attended McNeese State University, where he obtained both his BS in computer science and MBA. While matriculating at McNeese for both his undergraduate and graduate degrees, he was employed full-time at Citgo Petroleum as a process operator. He has also over 20 years experience in healthcare administration in both the public and private sector. Currently, he is co-owner alongside his sister, Tanya Clemens, who I know very well. She's also a member of Omicron Upsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and strategic partner in a local staffing franchise, Pride Staff. Prior to opening Pride Staff, he most recently held the position of External Relations Director with Louisiana Healthcare Connections. Among the organizations he has served on the board of directors, and in some cases he's still serving on the board of several different companies. So Mr. Clemens, I will let you take it from there and tell us about yourself, as well as telling us how you are navigating these unprecedented times.
Okay, thank you, Conchita. I appreciate it. One point of order is pronounced McNeese, and we take a little exception to that. Yes, currently, as you indicated from my bio, I am the co-owner and strategic partner with a Pride Staff office here in Lake Charles. Lake Charles is our hometown. It's a joint venture between my sister Tanya and I, and we're proud to be getting it off the ground. We've been open 2 years. We celebrated 2-year anniversary in April. And as you can imagine, being a small business owner yourself, there are challenges associated with owning a small business. And we've been going through those challenges the whole time. Unlike William, I'm going to name a bank. I don't have no problem with that, because the bank that we were doing business with is one of the larger banks, and not to cast aspersions on the bank, but just in order to everybody to get the full perspective as to what we went through dealing with a larger bank. And it's nothing negatively associated with the bank, so to speak. It just also kind of underscored to us the advantages of having dealings with a community bank who can give you more personal service. I did work a long time in customer service arenas, and I recognize good customer service when I see it. And I also recognize poor customer service when that occurs as well. I want to speak from the perspective of everything that we went through as far as navigating the system with the PPP process, currently monitoring the criteria for the forgiveness, and also how it's impacting our strategy moving forward. Because William made a great point, that 1% interest, even though we fully intend on getting our loan forgiven, that 1% interest is astounding. And we want to make sure that we keep that in mind, that it might not be no better time to just borrow the money and use it for other purposes, as opposed to being overly concerned about want to take out a loan, which we've always went to a great length to avoid. I want to give you some context as far as our chronology of events. We went from, it was about a 6-week period from when the legislation got approved until the point where we actually had the funds deposited in our account. And as you can imagine, it was some of the most agonizing and trying times and uncertain times as anyone could possibly imagine. I worked in state government for a period of time, and I also was involved with the legislative process. To see a piece of legislation of that magnitude get passed in that period of time is nothing short of amazing. But as you can imagine, there were some unintended consequences. As with the case of right now, there's some contemplation about doing a second round. It's already being proposed in the House by the House Democrats. They've put some bill on the table. It hadn't gotten any traction yet, but we're monitoring it very, very closely for this very reason. Doing the PPP process, and that was great, and it's still great. But you also got to take it from the perspective of us. We're a small business, and most of our clients have a 30-day payment period. And typically, a lot of them have a 60-day payment period. But also, everybody doesn't just pay their bills right on time, which means we have a lot of money that we have to flow. And to put this money in our hand, and just like millions of other businesses, and put this money in our hand and say, okay, here we're giving you this PPP money, pay your staff, and you should be well and good. also realize that you also, at the same time, you got to rebuild your client base. You got to get your customer base. You got to build all of that. I don't feel that bad about it because we're in the same boat with millions of other businesses. But with that being the case, the realistic aspect of it is the money is great. It's been a godsend for us. But at the same time, we got to, in essence, rebuild our business. And once we start that, we're going through the same process we did when we first opened the doors. We have to get out there. We got to rebuild our client base. First, we got to find out who's still in business. And once we find out who's still in business, what their needs are, and anticipate that, get them signed up, start finding them some people, because we're in the people finding business. And then once we get that started, then we know we're looking at a time delay of at least about another 3 months before we start getting some serious revenue in. And that is the main reason why it's being promoted to do a second round of this funding. Now, when the legislation was passed and it was open to the banks, it was March 31st. And we were very, very proactive. We have a good CPA who's very diligent. Typically, Tanya and our CPA and I have weekly conference calls just to talk about the status of the business. Well, these calls turned to be almost daily. Almost, in most cases, we almost didn't have anything to talk about, but we was still having the calls because there was so much uncertainty and there was so much misinformation out there, not just from the government's perspective, from the SBA perspective or the bank's perspective, but from business to business, there was uncertainty and misinformation. At the same time, I was talking to other businesses locally. I was talking to other prize staff offices in other parts of the country. Everybody had a different understanding of what the requirements would be. How would you go about the application process? Every bank had a different understanding about what the process was. We initially filed our first contact with Chase on April 2nd, just to kind of get an idea of what type of information would be required, and gathering that information and getting ready to submit it. We submitted our application on April the 3rd. The very next day, to our accountants.
Is that when the application opened up?
That is when Chase started allowing you to submit your information.
Accepting applications.
Yeah,
Okay,
accepting applications. Not submission to the SBA, but only through Chase. At the same time, I have a good relationship with a local banker who we've since in the process of trying to move our account over to a smaller community bank. And he was keeping me involved in the steps that the community banks were taking. And the gap was tremendous. The community banks had smaller clients, and they were able to give those smaller clients more hands-on attention. That is the main reason why they were able to secure loans quicker, because they worked weekends. They worked 24 hours a day for a period of about 2 weeks, just to make sure they were amply prepared. We finally received we submitted our application on the 3rd. We got confirmation from Chase on the 7th that they received our application and that everything was in order. And then on the 9th, we received another email from Chase requiring some additional information. We submitted that additional information, and then we did not hear anything from Chase for almost 2 weeks, because keep in mind, all correspondence was via email.
And you don't have a banker. You didn't have an individual banking relationship, a person who owned your account.
I have an account manager at the Chase branch locally here in Lake Charles, and oftentimes I was providing her information. They were that much in the dark. It really was. It was so much uncertainty. I was getting more information from my friend who was a bank president with a community bank than anyone I was getting from Chase. All correspondence, and they made it clear they wanted to keep it like that because they were getting overwhelmed with all the millions of loans that they were trying to get done. And as we were going through this, as you can imagine, Tanya and I were almost pulling our nails out, going like, what is the status with this? And then all of a sudden we got everything. We got the approval letter from Chase saying that the loan had been received. Everything was in order. They were submitting to the SBA. We then got another email from Chase saying they heard back from the SBA. Everything was in order. This was on April the 29th. Everything was in the state of being processed. And what happened? The money ran out. That's the first round. Then the money ran out. So we said, like, okay, everybody was relatively certain that a second round was going to occur. Okay. It wasn't anything definitive as far as when it's going to occur. And then you got to realize about at that time, the congressional hurdles start appearing, and everybody wanted to put this prevention in there, that prevention. And all the while, we're keeping our staff on payroll. We made the strategic decision that once we shut down our office, we closed our office on or about March 15th. Once we closed our office, we reassured our staff that we were going to keep them on payroll, because us being a staffing agency, we did fall under Homeland Security guideline as an essential agency, because we find people for people who got to keep the country moving. So we were allowed to remain open, but for the peace of mind of our staff, we have 4 employees. For the peace of mind of our staff, we made the decision to work remotely, because we didn't want them to ever feel like we were putting their health at risk, and their peace of mind was very, very important. That is also why we reassured them, despite whatever the government might do, our full intent was to hold on to our staff, primarily because what we do is not brain surgery, but there are nuances. And the fact of the matter is, if we lost these people and got to restart our business and got to get out there and recruit new people, that would be another challenge that we did not want to go through. But it was the right thing to do too. So we made the decision that we were going to keep our staff, and we did keep our staff. And by the time we finally heard back from when the second round opened, a couple of days in, we got approval that our money was forthcoming, and it did. We finally received our funds on May the 7th. So between March 31st and May the 7th, it was agonizing, it was gut wrenching, but we felt reasonably assured that we were going to be able to get the funding, and we eventually did get the funding. But we went through a lot of hurdles before we got the funding. I think a lot of that was a credit to the advice I was getting from a banker who I had no business. I had a personal relationship with him, but I did not have a business relationship with him. And when he was explaining to me all the questions that they had and the process they were going through, as opposed to what the larger banks were going through, the larger banks were much more delayed. I'm not going to say that they gave preferential treatment to some of their larger clients, but they certainly gave the appearance that they were giving preferential treatment to their larger clients. And oftentimes the appearance can be even worse than if you're actually doing it or not. And I know it was mentioned about some of the larger companies, the Ruth's Chris and some of the professional sports franchises that received the loans, and some of eventually returned the loans. I really didn't have a problem with them receiving the loans because they were eligible for the loan. And when it came right down to it, they were having to make the same decisions that we had to make. Okay. Do you want to not lay off staff? That was the basic provision of that's why it was called the payroll protection program, because it was designed to make sure that you keep your people on your payroll, and also as an alternative to them filing for unemployment benefits. They had to make the same decisions that we had to make. I didn't have a problem with that. The problem I potentially had is if they got favorable treatment. That would be the only problem I would have for it. So when it going into it right now, we hopeful that there might be a next round. I'm not anticipating a next round, but at the same time, I think it would be very, very beneficial to a lot of small businesses. But we're in a position where we have to rebuild our business, just like millions of other small businesses. I think there are numerous challenges associated with that. But at the same time, I feel like this, we're all in the same boat. We all got the same uncertainty. I think it's the people who get in there and come up with a strategy and a plan to move forward is the ones who's going to survive and the ones who are going to thrive. And I feel good about our position that we're in right now. As far as the forgiveness criteria, it was great when they decided to lower the threshold from 75% to 60%, but that really had no bearing on us because we kept our staff on payroll the whole time. That was more for businesses in the hospitality industry, primarily restaurants, because they almost wholesale let their people go for valid reasons. Even if with the PPP loan, they don't have any work for them to do. So it wasn't no reason for them to let these people go. But now these same industry who are coming to us on a daily basis, they're having problems finding their people, primarily because one of the unintended consequences of up in the unemployment insurance is that now people get an additional $600 a week unemployment, and they're being compensated at a rate they were never close to being compensated at in their previous capacities. And in essence, what they've done is they've raised the minimum wage, even if it's just for a temporary period of time. And I think it's great because that underscores that these people being underpaid the whole while. So now some of the people who worried about paying this loan back, a lot of it is because they can't even get their people to come back. So if they can't get their people to come back and they stuck with this loan, with this loan that they're gonna have to repay, it's going to cause a lot of other businesses to go under. So I think they're showing a little bit more flexibility now as far as coming down on the thresholds with the how many people you got, what percentage of it you got to pay back in loan as opposed to utilities and rent and all of that. But at the same time, it wasn't well thought out. But I think the main objective at the time was to get the money in people's hand. And when you move at a warp speed like that, invariably, you're going to have some situations and some scenarios that you did not anticipate. But at the same time, I think that I much prefer them doing it like that. And then let's address these other issues on the back end, as opposed to let's get the money out fast and then we'll worry about all the rest of it later. And that's been our experience. And moving forward, we monitor very, very carefully about whether we want to take this out as a forgiveness and make it a grant, as opposed to just taking this money and utilizing it for other purposes. Because 1% interest, as William indicated, you're not going to ever see that again with 5 years to pay it back. You could get very, very creative with that. And that's my experience, and that's our experience. And we're dealing with it now. We're going to be dealing with it for the foreseeable future. But a lot of us in the same boat. And that's why I feel like we're going to be okay. And I think most businesses will be.
Thank you so much for sharing the chronology of how you received your loan. Very, very helpful. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I too am a small business owner. I had a very similar situation to what you just described. Is there
Did you get much sleep?
Yeah, I had a very similar situation. I mean, lots of sleepless nights, hoping that we would be eligible for the loan, right? The fact that you cannot get a banker on the phone to really explain to you where you were in the process, explain to you what your eligibility would be, and then obviously the information that was coming out in the media from the SBA was confusing, right?
Yes, and were you dealing with a smaller bank, or was it one of the larger ones?
Yeah, so to be quite honest with you, when the application opened, I want to say it was the first week of April. It may have been April 3rd, and that's why I asked you that question. We put in an application everywhere. I put in anywhere I had a banking relationship, I put in an application. I put in an application with a community bank. I put in an application with where we had our another like medium-sized bank. We had an account with Chase. We put in an application with Chase. And then we had just started a relationship with First Republic Bank. And ultimately, First Republic Bank ended up being the bank that funded our PPP. They were the ones that identified a banker for us to work with who would answer our questions, respond to our emails. But we put in applications everywhere, not knowing if that would limit our chances.
Sure.
We didn't know if that was going to cancel our application. We just figured, you know, we were in desperate need of these funds because, like you, we had decided to keep our staff on the payroll. Although our projects had come to, for the most part, a halt. And so we decided to keep our staff on the payroll. And so we were running at a deficit, and we were hoping that we would be eligible for this loan. And what we did is we put in applications everywhere. And ultimately, First Republic Bank was the bank that funded our loan. And that is the bank that we are building a relationship with now, because they have been giving us the attention that we need. Yes. And they're, you know, they're a national bank. They're not, you know, they're not as large as Chase, but they're not, you know, in the community bank category. Feedback that I've heard from a lot of other business owners is just like what you described, that working with their community banks and with smaller banks, where there is someone who will pick up the phone, who will actually answer your email, you might text your banker. Those are the banks that have been able to fund a lot of these PPP loans, because those are the banks that are making sure that they're getting the documentation that you need from you. And that's why I want to invite Mr. Boyd back into the conversation. I'll cue our producers. There he is. Because one of the challenges is the documentation and how we should be documenting it. And so, Mr. Boyd, you mentioned before about, obviously, a lot of small businesses or independent contractors try to limit their tax liability for a myriad of reasons, but obviously that sometimes is detrimental when they need to go borrow money because it looks like they're an unprofitable business.
Exactly.
So a little bit about the documentation that's specifically required for the PPP loan, because a lot of, as I mentioned before, I personally put in applications with several different banks. Not all the same documentation was required. But can you talk, as the PPP has evolved, can you talk about the documentation that independent contractors and small business owners should be putting together for their PPP loan packages?
Well, number one, for a sole proprietor, non-LLC, they're going to look for a profit and loss statement, Schedule C, profit and loss. And generally, that's where the rubber meets the road. People are, inflating utilities, they're inflating all kinds of expenses to lower their overall self-employment tax, which is 15%. So based on the application, they use a formula. I don't remember what the formula is. They times 12 times your last year's adjusted gross income after expenses. So when you do that, so you made 100,000, but now, oh gee, I'm only showing 30. That loan is based on a calculation based on the 30,000, not the $100,000 of revenue you actually had. So now you've kind of shorted yourself in funds that you could have gotten because you were really trying not to pay income tax. So that was one of the main things I've heard from some of my other clients. And to note to Mr. Clemens' point, TD Bank was they had one of the most easiest processes I've noticed. I saw online here, Webster Bank was another one I got. And First County Bank, I got some raving reviews of them as well. But the main thing, to answer your question, is providing that your tax forms. And unfortunately, a lot of small business owners don't file taxes on a year-to-year basis. So now they may have to go back 2 years to legislate or underwrite this loan. Now you're in a situation where they may put you to the back of the line because your paperwork isn't updated. And one other thing I noted, and I think Mr. Clemens will attest to this, the bank that you have your payroll running through is one of the easier banks because they have most of your money, the flow of your money. You don't really have to prove it to them. They see it on a weekly, monthly basis by providing your payroll. So that's generally the more easy bank to use in situations like this.
Got it.
Yeah, and that was the reason why we elected to go through Chase, even though my friend who was at the community bank indicated, even though we did not have an arrangement there, he would have gladly submitted our loan through them. But for the exact reason that you alluded to, William, that's the reason why we decided to stick with Chase, mainly because we were already utilizing them for payroll and checking purpose and banking purposes. So we thought that would make it a lot more simplistic, but the reality of it, it didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, it delayed it anyway.
Right.
I want to go now to some of the questions that have come through our Facebook Live feed. So one question came in, if you funded the business in the early COVID days and did not take a paycheck, can you use the PPP funds to pay yourself the back pay or loan to the business?
Ooh, wow. That's a good question.
You can take it.
Yeah, so let me see. If you funded the business in the early COVID days and did not take a paycheck, well, number one, you should always pay yourself. And I think in one of the slides, it talked about you being a sole proprietor owner. You can always pay yourself. And if you could show in history, I made $1,000 a week, or I made, $2,000 a month. If you could show consistently that you were taking that money, you can then justify paying yourself that money from these PPP loans because you're showing a track record or history. And if you're early enough in your business, the life of the business, it's kind of hard to have a consistent track of what you were doing. So in this case, I would say absolutely. And the other thing is, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. So if they don't forgive it, did you still need the money? Absolutely. So take it and ask questions later is what I would say.
Thank you. I'm going to go to another question from our live Facebook. How would startups qualify for PP? I think it should be PPP, not PPE, but PPP.
That's mass. I'll let Mr. Clemens take that one.
That's an interesting question because it goes along. It runs a parallel to another question. I monitored the SBA website just to see what kind of new information is constantly coming out. And especially a lot of the restaurants are asking the question is, how much credit can they get for even attempting to bring employees back who are not returning calls or unwilling to come back? How much would that lower the threshold for the forgiveness? They hadn't got a definitive answer yet, but it's an interesting question because the whole purpose of the loan is to forgive you for your payroll. But if you can't get your payroll people to come back in to maintain your payroll, to me, the emphasis should be on, am I making the attempt? And if you're just trying to keep these businesses afloat, they have good intention. So the same thing would apply for this. That would be a question I would directly have to ask the SBA, because depending on who you ask for, you might get 5 or 6 different answers. And my position is, with you being a startup and depending on where you were in the process before the virus hit, I think would have a determining factor with that. But if you were in the process of starting up and you'd already hired people, I think that you would be eligible for one, but that's just my opinion.
That's one of the unintended consequences, as we spoke of, the speed of this legislation. It couldn't solve for all the intricacies of everyone's particular situations.
It would have took 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, another question. A question from Todd Clemens for either guest. The president is a big proponent of suspending payroll taxes for a period of time as a form of economic relief. If approved, would that benefit employers, employees, or both?
Well, we've had that question numerous times with our CPA, and the short answer is it would be a benefit to the business. It wouldn't be a huge benefit, but a benefit nonetheless. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of what our estimate is on our payroll tax, it might save us something like 2.5% tax over, each quarter. But that is just his estimate. But of course, any savings is great, but it wouldn't be a huge savings and wouldn't be any to the employees. It would probably mainly be to the employers who pay the payroll taxes.
Okay, we'll go to another question. Let's see. Can I receive both a PPP 7A loan and the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, I believe? The EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Can either of you answer that question?
I believe you can. I do have a client that has received both and has also applied for an SBA loan that's not a PPP loan. So there's a third cog to this too. SBA are still giving small business loans. I believe they've relaxed the underwriting because there's not as labor or paper intensive as they have been. So I would say, yes, you should be able to receive both. And I believe the EIDL is can be considered more of a grant.
No, we researched it, and the way it works is you can receive both, but you can't double dip. If you receive the EIDL, it's just going to subtract how much you're eligible for with the PPP loan. So it's not like I get a PP loan, max it out, and then I get the other loan. No, if you can get that EIDL loan, then you got to subtract that for the amount you're eligible for with the PPP. We looked into it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Let's see if we have any more questions coming in. No, looks like we do have some comments. There are some of our viewers who are giving some advice. So I invite you all to look at some of the advice that is on different experiences from other small business owners, on their experience with different local banks, as well as their experience with the PPP loan and the other resources.
Can I ask William a question?
Sure.
Now, William, I know there's a lot of anticipation about the second, not the second round. We've already gone through 2 rounds. Second stimulus round, not the second PPP loan. I know it's been proposed in the House. What would be your recommendations, or what would be your advice to small business owners in anticipation of if another round where you're eligible for more PPP funding, as far as how you want to position your business and your strategy you would advise them moving forward?
Well, number one, as I said in one of the previous slides, they're still over. I said 130 billion. As of last night at this morning, 2 a.m., that number was 148 billion. That's still available to be loaned.
Yeah, but that money is only available to people who never took a PPLP.
Right.
The second round is being proposed right now is for businesses that have already received PPP loans,
right,
and might be eligible for a second dip into the system.
Okay, I got you now.
Yeah, well, that's different.
The same rule as I say all the time. You always take the money because this money is on sale. There's nowhere you can get that kind of funding with that kind of interest rate and term with so little documentation and with so little proof of actual revenue. We all know, we all started businesses, right? To get a loan, it's literally, it's like swimming upstream. So what they've done is they've relaxed the concerns. So if they relax the concerns, I'll use the analogy, you don't go to take the train after it left the station. That train's in the station. If that second round of funding comes out, you apply as if you never got the first one. If you got the first one, you still apply and let them tell you no. Don't tell yourself no, or gee, I don't think I can. Larger businesses, as you've noticed, they get the money and decide what they're going to do after they get it. They never wonder why they should do it. They act and then deal with what the action was. That is the key for small business owners too. You can't borrow as the larger companies have, but in your small spaces, if it's $100,000, if it's $50,000, even if it's $30,000, that could be the lifeline to a small business. $30,000. It could be the difference of maintaining employees.
And especially with the PPP loan, there's no personal guarantee that you have to put forth for the loan.
There you go.
That's unheard of, really.
That's my point. So with these interest rates being historically low and the term, them stretching it to 5, the illustrations I gave you are only for 2 years. If they stretch it for 5, it's a slam dunk. It's an automatic, no questions asked. You just do it. And I'll be monitoring it as well as you and some of the others online here to see what are the guidelines. Can you go for a second loan? And I'm going to suggest to my clientele that they do.
Okay. I want to add a few more questions. So we had a question from our Facebook Live. My client completed an application for an SBA loan, but couldn't find a lender to accept it. What can he do?
Shop it around. I mean, really, no, simple as that. He can shop it around, because if he applied for a PPP loan, there's no personal guarantee. So there's no credit check. There's nothing like that. If you have a legitimate business and you have all the paperwork and one lender refuses to pick it up, shop it around, because somebody will be glad to assist you with it.
And as you said, maybe one of the smaller banks, or in this case, sometimes you can go to SCORE, the Society of Retired Executives. They may have a way to guide you to, or some of the CPA firms may know, for smaller businesses, may do pro bono work to say, hey, listen, I have this guy over here. You might want to use, or some businesses that already have SBA funding to go through there instead of shopping it yourself. And the last part I might want to add to in this, with SBA loans and PPP, is that some of the businesses that are taking these monies, Steve Mnuchin just said, they're not going to release the names of these companies as of this week who have gotten these funds. Originally, they were going to talk about and list all the companies that have gotten these monies. They've now said they're not going to. So you understand there are a lot of publicly traded companies who are not supposed to receive these funds that have received it, and a lot of companies who are profitable who are taking the monies for reasons that we spoke of earlier.
And to get back to William's point about money still sitting from the second round, what is it, like 160 billion still sitting out there?
It's over 148 billion
that hadn't been utilized. And a lot of the reason for that is people are confused about what the purpose of it is, whether it's going to be forgiven. They're not looking to sound advice from people like William and other people of that profession that's telling you, don't focus on what I'm going to do with the money. Can I pay it back? Just get it in your account and find a use for it. Get with you a good financial planner, a good CPA, so that they can explain to you. A lot of restaurants are especially reluctant to want to touch it, mainly because they don't know whether they're going to be open and don't know whether they're going to be able to find people. But the bottom line is, secure the loan, and then you can address all other concerns later. That's my
advice. Exactly. Well said.
I want to take a few more questions, and of course, I'm itching because I have a few questions for you all as well. But I want to invite questions that are coming in from our Facebook feed first. So we have lessons learned. What would you or your clients do differently if given the chance?
Well, what I would have done differently is what I'm doing right now. I'm in the process of transitioning our business account away from Chase, a much larger bank, to a smaller community bank. And it has nothing, I had no complaints about Chase. And really, in essence, I really don't have a whole lot because I eventually secured my loan. It just underscored that the role that the community bank has to play in that relationship with a community bank, especially for smaller employers. Nothing like that hands-on treatment. It's nothing like picking up the phone and can talk to a person regardless of whether they can give you sound advice. If nothing else, they can tell you, hey, we're in the same boat with you. We feel you. I can't explain anything, but at least they can be compassionate. That's the number one advice I would give. I would do differently in my position. And we currently transitioning to doing that anyway.
And my only advice is to make sure that your paperwork, and I know this is hard when you're running a business, you're usually working in the business, not on the business. Having your tax forms and taxes done in a timely manner is of most importance. It's the uppermost thing you should be doing, because when you go to get something, they're going to always base it on paperwork, your taxes, your revenues, bank statements. So make sure your paperwork is always top notch.
And especially for a newer business where you don't have really established credit, that's all the more reason to jump on this money right now, because they loosening the purse strings, and this might be a one-time deal. So I mean, you don't have to have good credit. You don't have to personally guarantee it. Go grab the money, because who says 2 years from now, if you're struggling with your business and you need to borrow money, it might be harder to borrow. And if you can, it's going to be at a lot higher interest.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you recommend that you should apply for a regular SBA small business loan now if it is a better time than waiting till after COVID passes?
Depending on the conditions of the loan. I mean, really, you want to take all of that into factor. I mean, if she's talking about the PPP loan, of course I would say take it. Now, if she's talking about some other type of loan, then you got to scrutinize what all exactly you're getting yourself into, how much you personally guaranteeing, what kind of interest rates you're going to get it at. But if she's strictly talking about the PPP loan, unequivocally, yes, jump on it. That's my advice. Exactly.
And to Mr. Clemens' point, SBA is still the SBA. They still have their guidelines. They still have how they work. I believe they're not as overwhelmed as they were maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago or a month ago. So maybe you can get the loans approved, but the guidelines still are there. What are you using it for? Why do you need it? How is your business plan? How strong is it? So their underwriting guidelines have not changed.
And also to put some perspective on it, in a typical year, the SBA does what, William, about $12 billion a year worth of loans. And here they did almost $600 billion worth of loans in 2 months. Yeah. They overwhelmed like everybody else, but they're trying to get this money out. And at the same time, it's working to our advantage, but we got to use it and we make sure that the bank's working in tandem with us.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, we have a couple more minutes. I have one more question for you all, and then we will, invite you to kind of let us know how we can stay in touch with you all. Who's eligible for the EIDL loan? So we spent most of our conversation talking about the PPP loan, which was the payroll protection loan. Payroll protection program. But for those people who maybe are not eligible for that, but are looking at the EIDL loan, can you guys tell us about who's eligible for the EIDL?
That loan they're referring to is strictly for emergency situations, and in that particular case, I think the maximum on it is what, $10,000 you can get with that loan, and it's for emergency situations. It's not one of the routine loans, but of course we're under emergency situation now once everything has been declared with COVID. But for the most part, that loan there is to help businesses out in emergency situations. It maxes out at a certain amount. I think it's $10,000 in most instances. And as I was alluding to earlier, if you do the PPP loan in conjunction with that EIDL, you can't double dip. You can only get, if you get a PPP loan and you get up to say $80,000 and you'd already taken out the other emergency loan, then your PPP loan would just be for $70,000. You're going to deduct that amount. So
exactly.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us today. This has been a spirited discussion. Obviously, I learned a lot. It was good to sort of share my experience along with hearing your experience with this program. can I invite you both? I will start with you, Mr. Boyd. If you can let us know how we wanted to connect with you, how should we stay in touch with you?
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you and your sorors today, and all the audience out there. I can be reached on my cell phone. It's my business line as well. It's area code 203-918-8078. And my email is william_boyd@cfsllc.com. And what I usually specialize in, back to COVID, a lot of people have not so much only lost their lives, but a lot of people have been injured. Their health has changed. They've been put in situations where they're not the same and they have not been able to go back to work as they should. I do a lot of disability for white collar professions, small business owners. So by doing disability, if you became injured, sick or injured, and COVID is no fault of anyone's own, if you became sick or injured and had diminished lung capacity and you can't do your job, I sell the type of insurance that would have paid you money per month tax-free so that you can continue on. It's almost like a PPP for yourself. In terms of life insurance, I'll show you how to use some monies to use for life insurance that in cases like this would have taken care of your long-term care, because some people that have suffered from this disease are now going to be on long-term care, not being able to do the 7 daily activities. So in my financial practice, we show people not only what to do in good times, but how to prepare budgets, monies when things don't go so well. So COVID happened to people in a sense of health, but it also affected people's actual ability to make money and have money come to their business. So it was a multiple layered effect on people. Some got sick, some their money got sick, their clients got sick, the other businesses that feed them got sick. The supply chains that supply your entire businesses all failed immediately, all at the same time, which has never happened in my time in the history of this country. So that same situation, I help people with their money in cases of things like this, so that they have the proper monies and buckets to pull from when disasters like this take place. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. I'm sorry?
What was your
My email again is william_boyd@cfsllc.com.
Got it.
And cell number, you can feel free to reach out, call, or even text to 203-918-8078. Feel free to text me. I'm always available.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Clemens, can you let us know how we would want to, if we wanted to stay in touch with you, how would we get in contact with you?
Yes, our office number, we're located right here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Our office number is 337-602-8612. Our app will forward it to my mobile, so it's not a problem at all. Email wise, it's tclemens, CLEMONS.com, tclemens@pridestaff.com. PrideStaff is all one word, PRIDESTAFF. And the only thing I want to leave you with is, sometimes you're driving down the highway and you see a big construction projects and you'll see these big signs saying, hey, this is your tax dollars at work. That's the way everybody need to look at this PPP and all this stimulus money, whether it's your $1,200.
Well said.
This is not a gift from the government. This is your tax dollars at work. So get in there, get your PPP loan, worry about paying it back or don't pay it back, whatever the case is. Not personal guarantee, and move forward with that. But it's not a gift. It's your tax dollars. So just keep that in mind.
Well said. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And then I do want to invite our Facebook Live viewers. Please, before you leave, please drop a note in the chat. Tell us what you liked about this conversation. Tell us what things you wish that we included in this conversation so we can make it better next time. I want to thank everyone for coming and joining us today. Again, to our special guests. It's been a very insightful and spirited discussion. I look forward to staying in touch with both of you as we navigate these uncertain times.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm going to invite back our president so that she can kind of give us some final words.
Well, again, I want to thank you both for a tremendous program. I think you've provided tremendous information for those who are entrepreneurs, small business, medium-sized businesses. Thank you to our host, Ms. Tucker, who did an exceptional job. want to recognize the committee for their thoughtfulness to bring this forward at this time. I think it's very timely. So I want to thank the chair who is offline, who is watching and making sure we're on point and hitting everything on point. Miss Valerie Adams Baker, her committee, Tanya Clemens, Conchita Tucker, and several others, Malvina Callion. There's lots of great women who thought about this and put this together. So gentlemen, thank you. Again, we will make this accessible. You can watch it back on our Facebook page. It'll be accessible. So if you missed something, viewers, you can come back and get it. We are looking to launch a YouTube page, so we'll put it out there. You can get that as well. So thank you for being a part of our very first live feed. You all.
Thanks.
Nice.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Folks, please drop it in the chat. Please tell us what you liked, what we can change, how we can improve. It's critical that we get your feedback. And with that, we will close and let everyone marinate on this great information. And as Mr. Clemens said, go get that money. It doesn't matter.
It's yours.
Right.
You can figure out what to do with it later. So then make those businesses strong and sustainable.
Absolutely.
Have a great afternoon. Good morning. Great
Thank you.
Hey,
Have a great day, guys.
Hey, take care.
Great day.
Okay, we can stay. Oh, Mr. Clemens left. You can stay in the Conchita left too. Thank you again, Mr.
Boyd.
Oh,